to a few words of Torah. This past Thursday, this Thanksgiving, was a little different this year, as holidays in 2020 have tended to be. Right. So in lieu of hopping on planes or gathering as one big family, we returned to our computers and video chatted the day away. And in a way, it was a blessing with families with children, especially when my nephews go to bed at 6 and my niece goes to bed at 7:30 and my children go to bed around 8, well, a little around 7:38. No matter how you slice it, a dinner at any time would be either too early or too late for each family. Thus, we resigned to have the Zoom open with breakout rooms if people wanted to recreate the types of conversations that a bunch of busy chefs would have in the kitchen, or a bunch of noisy kids might be having in the playroom during any year, a pandemic-free year. So thus, I found myself in the playroom breakout room with my children and my brother and nephew, and we were busting out our dance moves, raising the roof, shaking your tushy. And we were giving tours of our toys and showing off our favorite places to each other on Google Maps. And I genuinely was so immersed in the conversation that it was a shock to me when Sarah calls down the stairs, "Hillel, don't you have Minion?" Yes, I did have Minion, and it started 5 minutes ago. I had lost track of time. The Zoom fatigue that I experienced during the week seemingly has disappeared, and instead I was immersed in this Zoom conversation with family on Thanksgiving Day. And one could say that I was in the zone. Positive psychologists call being in the zone, they call it being in the state of flow. Being in a flow state is the feeling when you are completely immersed in a project and you are enjoying doing it, so much so that you lose track of time. And we've all had that experience, maybe at work, maybe at home, when we are doing a project that is just challenging enough, but not too challenging, that it demands our focus, where you find yourself not minding having to do it, and before you know it, time has slipped away from you. For some, this is the experience at bedtime when they vowed you go to sleep early, but a few episodes later, or a chapter in a book, and all of a sudden you wonder, wow, when did it get to be 1 o'clock in the morning? I will just share that for me, I apparently like to search things, like to research things on Google. Someone says, oh, there was this random picture on a gravestone. Who knows what this is a symbol of? And I'm like, oh, I'll take it on myself to figure it out. And even if I don't figure it out, 4 hours later, I'm like, where did the day go? All right. But well before the positive psychologists gave this phenomenon a name, it was already documented in our Torah. So in this week's Parsha, Parshat Vayetze, we pick up on the story of Jacob, as I said, leaving his parents' home to escape the wrath of his brother, from whom Jacob stole the blessing. And he heads back to the old country of his mom and seeks refuge with his uncle Laban, with Laban. As opposed to Abraham's servant, who was laden with gifts and with gold and with wealth when he encountered Laban, Jacob comes with nothing. So Laban puts him to work and asks, what will his wages be? And smitten with Laban's daughter, Rachel, I said his cousin Rachel, Jacob says that he'll work 7 years for her hand in marriage. Laban agrees, and then the text says, so Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Already in the Torah, we see a man who is so absorbed with the task, and because the work is worth it in his eyes, he doesn't mind doing it. And thus the 7 years doesn't seem to take 7 years at all. I can imagine Jacob in a state of flow, albeit an absurdly long one. And I wonder if this experience is related to the phenomenon of children seeming to grow up so quickly, or those other moments where we suddenly feel so old, that we are so focused on life around us and the work that needs to get done. When we pick up our heads years later, we wonder, what happened? Where did the time go? Generally, in positive psychology, being in the state of flow is qualitatively neutral. Losing track of time isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing. Sometimes it is something that one might seek, and other times it is something that is hindrance to how we live our lives. If your job is one that you love and the work you're doing you love doing, then it's a blessing that time flies each day and you don't have to count every minute while you're at your desk. On the other hand, if your vacation comes to an end and you didn't feel like you savored every minute, then you wonder if perhaps you didn't get the full extent of your vacation. Thus, our tradition reminds us that each and every day we should be mindful of time. Not only are the holidays splattered throughout the year to remind us of specific values, and not only do we encounter Shabbat each week, we also have daily times for prayer to help us break us out of those moments of flow. 3 times a day, once in the evening, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, our tradition advises us to break out of any state of flow we might be in and to be mindful of time once more. Is it good for me to lose track of time right now? Are there more productive or more meaningful activities that are worthy of my time? Surely this puzzle is indeed distracting and fun, but perhaps I should be winding down for the night so that I can feel refreshed for tomorrow. Interestingly, it is also this week's parsha that reminds us to take a break and pray in the evening, as the rabbis connect the evening requirement to stop and reflect and pray to Jacob's evening, stopping and resting and encountering the angels going up and down on the ladder at the beginning of our parsha. And doubly interesting, it is after Jacob awakes from his sleep that he realizes that God was in this place and he didn't even know it. Or in other words, Jacob was so absorbed in his mission of getting to the old country of Haran that he didn't even recognize that God was standing next to him. This is the power of ritual, the ability to draw us out of the states of flow and cause us to reflect on the trajectory of our lives. Time forever marches on, but we have the ability to infuse each and every moment with meaning, especially if we are aware of each and every moment. On the grand scheme of things, Judaism asks, so what? You lived, big whoop. What did you do with your life that mattered? It's great that you had fun, and it's great that you laughed, and that you got swept away doing the things that you enjoyed. But what difference did it make? What was the meaning of your life? And one answer that it gives is that it recognizes that not only do we have the power to find things we enjoy doing and seeking happiness for ourselves, but we also have the opportunity to help others. Not only are we different because of the choices we made, but the world can be different as well. We have the power to repair and to heal and to help. And thus our lives have meaning in relationship to a much larger cosmic scheme of things. By helping others, it matters that we live. By healing the world in any amount, it matters that we live. By nourishing our families, it matters that we live. And thus our tradition wants us to remember that, always, and not to let any moment slip away. To be aware of what needs doing and making sure that we spend the time that we are committed to doing it. And that means that sometimes we have to get out of the zone, to check in and see if this is how we want to spend all of our minutes, all of our hours, and all of our days. This Shabbat, it's my prayer that we can resolve to set those reminders in our lives, not just periodically throughout the year with a splattering of holidays, and not only weekly with Shabbat, but daily, that we can set a handful of reminders each and every day so that we can check in and purposely choose actions of meaning. And thus we might be absorbed in our tasks and our lives, and we might lose track of time, but yet 7 years later and beyond, we'll feel satisfied knowing that every minute mattered and that we made every second count. Shabbat Shalom.